I cheated to finish this game. Wait, stop. Don't click off. Let me explain. I cheated to finish Lobotomy Corporation. I downloaded Wii Model 1, as it's now called. I gave my agents enough stats to wrestle God. I used console commands. I beat a 50-hour Korean management game in 11 hours flat by using every single dirty trick the PC platform makes available to a man who has lost all moral compass. I deserve to be put on a list. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am, in the eyes of the Project Moon community, the lowest possible form of human being. And I'm here to tell you that doing this, committing the specific act of gamer cowardice,
wait, what the fuck, Clara?
Accidentally made me understand the entire fucking point of the game. Because the man you play as in Lobotomy Corporation, the faceless manager, the silent protagonist running this nightmare workplace at the end of the world, he cheated too. Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Saber, not Saber. I make long-form video essays about games that do something specific and weird with their design, and today we are doing the most quietly devastating piece of writing I have engaged with in possibly the last 5 years. This is Lobotomy Corporation, a 2018 Korean indie management horror by a studio called Project Moon. And it has crawled inside my head and built a nest, and I am going to spend the next 60 minutes, 90 minutes, however long this video is going to be, trying to explain why. Brief disclosure before we begin. I do not, as a rule, like difficult games. I have said this before on the channel. Last time I made one of these about a punishment genre game, Darkest Dungeon. You may have seen it. It's probably why some of you are here. I said it then and I'll say it now. I am built for narrative, not for suffering. I do not enjoy permadeath. I do not enjoy 50-minute days. I do not enjoy reloading because the singing tree ate the only agent with a name I like. And Lobotomy Corporation is a game whose entire reputation, fairly earned, is that it is one of the most punishing experiences in the indie space. So I did what any rational coward would do. I gamed the system, I bypassed the suffering, I treated this thing like an extremely involved Wikipedia article, and I clipped through the walls. And here is what cheating got me. Day 1, I gave Bobby Smith infinite fortitude. Day 3, Bobby Smith was eaten by a small budgie anyway. Day 5, I cheated harder. Day 10, the AI on my desk had a small breakdown and the day kept going, but I was paying closer attention now. Day 15, I watched a child be crushed in a hydraulic press because the game just sort of did it. And the game knew exactly what it was doing. Day 25, in a coffee shop in Tokyo, the flashback started around about then. Day 30, well, it's later on the day 35, but I'm stupid. The game told me very politely that I would not be allowed to complete both of the late game challenges in a single run. So of course, I cheated harder, because that has been my entire policy on this game, and I do not change horses mid-cope. Day 40, I fought the hardest boss in the game. Day 49, the corporation was almost out of days, and I was almost out of the man I was when I'd started playing it. Day 50, the screen went white, and I am still, 2 months later, thinking about it. And somewhere around the 5th one, I worked out who the silent faceless protagonist of the game actually was, and I sat there in the dark on my laptop and went, oh, that's what cheating got me. Cheating got me past the gameplay, but it did not get me past the writing. The writing is the actual machine in this game, and the writing is so well built that even with every difficulty gate yanked off the floor, it still found me. It found me in the corners, it found me in the dialogue I tried to skip. It found me in a coffee shop on the other side of the world at 4 in the morning, and it sat me down and explained, very gently, what it was about. And here's the part I want to address before we go any further, because I think it does matter. I had seen Project Moon from across the room for about 2 years, ever since someone mentioned it in my comments. The shoggoth in my peripheral vision, so to say. The fan art with the bandage eyes, the fans who didn't so much enjoy the franchise as get conscripted by it, and then will not stop posting about it. I had my hands politely behind my back for a long time going, no, I do not have time for the Korean trauma simulator. I have a dissertation, I have car payments. Nothing good has ever happened to anyone who turned around and looked the tentacle in its eyes. And then, like everyone else who eventually breaks, I caved. Because the law had its hooks in me before I'd even installed the thing. Because the people who got conscripted weren't wrong, they were posting like that for a reason. Because eventually, you have to find out what the reason is. And here's the thing, the reason I'm telling you that I cheated, the reason this is the cold open and not a footnote, is because the protagonist of this game is a man who did exactly the same thing. He was offered the option to suffer his way through something extraordinarily painful, the long way, the honest way, and he refused. And he found a workaround, and he ran the workaround for 10,000 years. The entire game is a story about what that costs, about what it means to skip the end of your own grief. And the fact that I, the player, the viewer, the long-form video essayist with a history degree and a Wiimod subscription, did the same thing on my way through the game, the fact that the cheating gesture is the exact gesture the protagonist made is, in my opinion, the actual thesis of Lobotomy Corporation. It is the game saying, yes, this is what you would do. This is what anyone would do. Now sit down, let me show you what happens next. So that's where we're going. I'm going to walk you through one of the strangest, ugliest, most opaque, most violently heartbreaking games ever made by 10 people in a sole office. And I'm going to do it in roughly the order you'd experience it yourself, because the way this game reveals itself is the entire trick. By the end of this video, you will know what an abnormality is, you will know who Angela is and why she is the most important character in any game I have covered on this channel. You will know what Cogito, I'll probably call it that. You will know why this corporation exists. You will know what's in the basement. You will, with any luck, also know why I think this is one of the best things ever made in the medium, and why I think the people who tell you to skip Lobotomy Corporation and just play Library of Ruina are wrong. Strap in, open your cheating engine if you want. I'm not your dad. Let me show you what found me. Right, before we descend any further into this facility, let's talk about something that won't try to breach containment. This video is sponsored by Lost in Cult. You might know Lost in Cult from their Design Works books, proper premium deep dives on games like Alan Wake, Tunic, Cult of the Lamb, and Outer Wilds. Well, they've just launched a new one, and it's Terraria, made in collaboration with Relogic themselves, written by Christian Donlan and built on in-depth interviews with Andrew Spinks, the one bloke who created Terraria and then somehow kept it alive for 15 years, like it's some kind of immortal pet. It's the full story of where the game came from, why it works the way it does, and, as the team themselves apparently like to joke, why it won't die. Every biome, every endgame monster, every really cool sword. Explained. And if you're quick, there's a deluxe edition, only available while the pre-order campaign runs. That ends the 31st of July. A hard-shell slipcase, Eye of Cthulhu in holofoil, plus a frankly ridiculous pile of extras. A card game, a papercraft kit, pin badges, a holo bookmark, 9 postcards. It's less a book and more of a shrine. Miss the deadline, and the standard edition's still there, but the deluxe won't be. Use code NotSaberTerraria at lostincult.co.uk, link in the description, for 10% off the Terraria collection, or honestly, anything in their store. It supports the channel, and you get a genuinely gorgeous book about a genuinely gorgeous game. Everybody wins, except the employees of Lobotomy Corporation. Back to them. You boot up the game. You are dropped into an underground facility. You are told you are the manager. You are not given a name, you are not given a face, you're not given a voice. You are, for all intents and purposes, a cursor, and the game's protagonist is the click. Greeting you is an AI assistant called Angela. Angela has shut eyes. I want you to file that away because it's going to matter in about fucking 90 minutes. Jesus Christ. She is polite, soft-spoken, faintly clinical. The customer service voice of an institution that has very much rehearsed this conversation more than you fucking know. She walks you through the basics. The facility produces energy. The energy comes from working with abnormalities. The abnormalities live in containment cells. Your employees, called agents, perform work on the abnormalities. Successful work generates energy. Unsuccessful works generally generates corpses. Hit the daily quota or the day fails. Welcome to Lobotomy Corporation. Let me know if you have any questions, because she will not be answering any of them. The first abnormality you meet in any run, because it's basically a roguelike, is called One Sin and Hundreds of Good Deeds. He is a floating skull with a cross, you know, very inviting. He is, in lore terms, an externalized manifestation of moral guilt. The idea that one bad act can be outweighed by many small good ones. In gameplay terms, he is a tutorial. You assign Bobby Smith, your first agent or whatever the fuck, to perform insight work on him. Bobby Smith comes back, fine, you get some energy. Angela makes a small encouraging noise, and this is fine, you are good at this, you're gonna crush this game. Day 2, new abnormality. This one's a bird. It's called Punishing Bird. It looks like a budgie that escaped from a Tesco car park. The flavor text says it punishes sinners. The flavor text is doing a lot of work. Within 3 days, you will have learned that Punishing Bird, the cute little bird, will occasionally get bored in its cell and walk out of its containment to peck random agents to death, and that the only thing that stops it is for someone to walk up to it without flinching, because flinching makes it open a mouth in its chest the size of a small car and eat them whole. This is the second easiest abnormality in the game. Welcome to Lobotomy Corporation. Day 3 through 5 expands the bestiary in roughly this register. There is an old lady who wants you to call your grandparents. There is a refrigerator-shaped entity that wants to be your friend. There is a swarm of fairies who present as benign but aren't. There is an apple that never rots. There is a red button. Don't press the red button, please. But of course, you probably will press it, and everyone dies. You learn, and you move on. The actual gameplay loop, once it's clicked, is this. Every agent has 4 base stats: fortitude, prudence, temperance, and justice, which roughly correspond to 4 kinds of work: instinct, insight, attachment, and repression, each of which corresponds to a different way of approaching an abnormality. Some abnormalities want to be feared, some want to be understood, some want to be loved, some want to be just told to shut the fuck up. The game does not tell you which is which, and the game's tutorial is in its trauma. The only way to learn what they actually like is by interacting with them. You assign an agent. The agent walks into the cell, and a bar fills on the left of the containment unit. If the right stats are high enough and the right work type is selected, the agent walks out with some energy and a tiny mental scar. If not, the bar fills the wrong way with the red cubes down, and the abnormality might breach containment, and the agent is now distributed across 3 corridors, and your other agents are sprinting for the lifts, and the clerks just want to kill themselves, and it's just like a whole thing. This is observation. This is how you learn what an abnormality wants. You do not get a manual so much as you get a body count, and bury them you will. Because the Lobotomy Corporation operates on permadeath. Your agents have names, they have stats, they have hairstyles you can spend 20 minutes selecting, because what else are you doing? Working on your dissertation? I know I'm not. When they die, they die. You can hire new ones, but new ones start at level 1 unless you spend lobotomy points on strengthening them. And a level 1 agent against a level 3 abnormality has roughly the same survival odds as me trying to merge onto the A470 with brake fluid for ambition. The corporation's solution to attrition is the corporation's solution to everything, which is hire more bodies. Some will make it, some won't. You won't know until they're inside. Around day 5, you meet your first department head. Her name is Malkuth. She is unbearably perky. She is the AI in charge of the control team. Broadly, facility logistics and operations. And she speaks like a girl who has just been promoted to shift lead at her first part-time job and has not stopped explaining the rota since. She is, on the face of it, an HR onboarding video that has somehow gained consciousness. She is, you will eventually find out, one of the most tragic characters in the game. But not yet. Right now, she's just a bit chatty. She gives you missions: complete a day without losing an agent, train an agent to level 2, suppress a small ordeals. Ordeals being timed events where extra hostile creatures spawn in the facility, and which I will not be explaining in detail because we'd literally be here all night. I'm not kidding, there's so much. The missions are relatively easy, and you do them. Malkuth is pleased and the corporation hums along. This is structurally the longest stretch of the game that you can pretend it's just a normal video game. By which I mean, the music is fine, the art is cute, the deaths are funny when they happen to a Bobby Smith or a Jeff or a Johnny or whatever the fuck, or some Korean name you've only had for 6 minutes, and the systems are knowable enough that you start to feel competent. You begin learning the abnormalities. You write down the preferences in your head. One sin likes insight, punishing bird likes attachment, as long as you don't flinch. The old lady wants you just to be nice to her. The fridge wants attachment also. The fairies want everyone dead but pretend otherwise. You start moving agents around like you know what you're doing because increasingly, you feel like you do. And the corporation hums along and the days tick by, and Angela offers small encouragements at the end of each shift. And around day 9 or 10, you start to notice things. Small things, easy to dismiss. The way Angela sometimes refers to the previous manager in passing in a tone that's slightly too warm or slightly too dismissive for a colleague she's never named. The way the facility's corridors have wear patterns in them, coffee stains, scratched walls, a chair that's been pushed too far back from a desk too many times. Like someone has been working here for a very long time, even though the corporation, you have been told, is relatively new. And the cactus. There's supposedly a cactus on your desk. It's you never actually see it, but Angela mentions it in passing on one of the days you don't have anything else to do. She asks if you think it will bloom. You can answer yes, you can answer no. If you say yes, she observes gently that you speak as if you've seen it bloom before. If she says no, she asks why you keep it. There is no sunlight down here. Nothing should bloom in the basement of this place. The conversation ends and the day ends. You move on. File it away, we're coming back to the cactus at some point. At around day 10, Malcuff's storyline reaches its first proper beat. You complete the final mission in her opening arc, where she asks you to suppress a dusk ordeal, one of the hardest ordeals you have had to do so far. And then the game gives you the option for a core suppression after you see some of her backstory. This is, as far as you currently understand, a special mission. You agree, you press start, and the day begins. And it does not behave like the other days. Here's what happens. You assign Bobby Smith to work on one sin and hundreds of good deeds, which is, at this point, the easiest possible job in the corporation. The equivalent of asking a junior to go and fetch coffee. The work order accepts and the bar starts to fill. And then halfway through, without warning, without your permission, the work order changes. Bobby Smith is no longer doing insight work and instead is doing repression work. And one sin is not very happy, and Bobby Smith is not statted to handle, and who is about to flinch. You reach for the cancel button, but the cancel button does not respond. You queue another work order. The work order accepts and then changes too. There is a small notes window in the corner of the screen that will not close because Malcuff is making sure that everything is documented. Today in considerable detail, because in the world of this core suppression, the management of the facility has been taken away from you and given back to her. The day's energy quota is climbing, your agents are dying, and you cannot fix anything because the cancel button does not work. And the cancel button does not work because Malcuff has decided, for one day only, that the safety net you have been relying on for 10 days is in fact a courtesy. It is not a feature. And today that courtesy has been revoked. And here's the thing nobody warned me about because turns out not a lot of people cheat, which I want to talk about specifically. I cheated, obviously. I gave my agents enough fortitude to bench press Newport. None of that helps me here. The core suppressions are not built around your stats. The core suppressions are built around your assumptions. The assumption that you can pause, that you can cancel, that you can correct, that the game has a takeback. Cheats can't undo that. Cheats can't give Bobby Smith back the work order he was supposed to have. Cheating can give Bobby Smith 1,000 of every stat in the game, but the work order will still change mid-execution, and he will still die because he was in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing for reasons that have nothing to do with his ability to survive it. This is the first thing Lobotomy Corporation teaches you about its actual difficulty. The difficulty is not necessarily in the numbers, although it certainly isn't great. The difficulty is in the control. The numbers you can cheat, the control you cannot. While Bobby Smith is being unmade by his own paperwork, while you are typing notes you do not want to type, while the day refuses to end, Malcuff is talking to you. She is not chatty anymore. She is not the shift lead at her first part-time job. She is monologuing gently in little dialogue boxes that pop up between the work orders on the fucking facility. And she's telling you a story. She's telling you about a girl named Elijah. Elijah used to work in a different facility a long time ago. Elijah was clumsy. Elijah, by her own assessment, had no talent. Elijah desperately wanted to prove that she was useful to a research team that was performing important work on a substance called cogito. I'm just going to call it cogito. The precise nature of which we will get to in roughly 40 minutes, but which, for our purposes right now, you need to understand was dangerous and had not been cleared for human trials. Elijah did not care. Elijah broke into the test lab one night and injected herself with unrefined cogito, and it didn't go great. The substance did to Elijah's body what unrefined cogito does to a body, which is liquefy it from the inside slowly. And Elijah, dying in horrific pain, her fingernails and teeth falling out, the inside of her becoming the outside, crawled out of the lab and down the corridor looking for help, and made it as far as the office of a man called the manager. He was working at his desk, and the manager did not look up. Elijah, by this point, could barely speak, and she got as far as his shoes, and she begged him to kill her. She lay there at his feet, melting, looking up, and the manager looked down at her, very briefly, and then turned away. He did not call for help, he did not pick her up, he didn't say anything to her. He just turned his back from her and went back to whatever he had been working on, and let her die at his feet, on the carpet, looking at the shoes. And then, and Malcuff does not say this part out loud, you have to put it together yourself. That manager somehow took what was left of her and put her into a new body and installed her in this corporation as one of the AI department heads and gave her the name Malkuth and told her she ran the control team. He made her perky, he made her bright, he made her forgetful. He gave her a chair and a desk and a control panel and a script of cheerful onboarding lines to greet the new manager on his first day. And she has been working at this job in this body in this corporation for an unspecified but very long time. We've no idea that she used to be Elijah, well, glimpses of it, but we've no idea who the man at the desk was. We've no idea that the reason she pushes herself so hard, the reason she is so desperate to stand on her own 2 feet, the reason she cannot stop apologizing for mistakes she does not remember making, is because she has done this before, and it killed her. And the man at the desk, the man who turned away, the man who scanned her and rebuilt her and dressed her up like a tutorial NPC and gave her a perky voice and a name from the Kabbalah and a department to run, that, for the moment, is you. The day ends, the core suppression resolves. There are several new Bobby Smiths. Malkuth in the aftermath comes back to the screen and she is still perky, she is still chatty, and she does not remember any of what she just told you. Well, she somewhat remembers the meltdown, but she is fractionally different. She thanks you, she tells you that she thinks after today you might be able to stand on your own 2 feet. She gives you a permanent upgrade, which is what these suppressions do. Every department head, when you finish their core suppression, gives the corporation a permanent buff, the foundation of the building structurally improved by each AI's small reckoning with what they used to be. The corporation hums along. And you sit in your gamer chair, possibly in Tokyo, possibly on your laptop in your bedroom in Wales, possibly at 4 a.m. with a half-cold cup of tea, and the Wiimote overlay is still up on your second monitor, and you look at the screen and you think, oh, this is not a goofy SCP management sim. This is something else. And the cactus, by the way, is still apparently on your desk. Nobody mentioned it today, nobody mentions it most days, it's just there, in the damp darkness of the facility, refusing to bloom, but also refusing to die. There are 9 more department heads in this facility, and we are going to meet all of them. Now you understand the shape of what this game is going to do, basically. Each department head has a core suppression, and each suppression starts with a mechanical change to the way the game works. Each suppression reveals, in pieces, the human life that this AI used to have, before some specific catastrophe killed her or him, and the manager put her back together with a new face. Each suppression ends with a permanent upgrade and an AI who is fractionally more aware of who they used to be. Before the day ends and the awareness gets sponged off, sometimes kind of, it's a bit ambiguous. You've met one, there are 9 left. The next 3 live on what the game calls the upper floor of the facility, the same one as Malkuth. The easiest tier, where you spend your first couple of days, well, so how I don't fucking know the exact numbers. What am I writing this video? Hello? Each one is going to be a slightly worse version of what Malkuth just was. The first of them is Yesod. Yesod runs the information department. Yesod is wrapped neck to ankle in longer clothes that cover every square inch of skin he has because he can't look at his own body without imagining it rotting from the inside. He is curt, he can be abrasive. His employees, you learn, call him the Viper. He says as few words to you as he can manage and then leaves the conversation immediately, like a man who needs to wash his hands. In life, Yesod was a researcher called Gabriel. Gabriel worked at the original lab and he watched Elijah die. Gabriel, being the obsessive type, became convinced that the cogito that killed Elijah had infected him too, somehow, that he could feel it under his skin, that he was rotting, that he was already gone, only nobody had told him yet. Gabriel begins scratching at himself. Until eventually, the scratching became too much and, well, I'm sure you can imagine what happens. But his core suppression censors information. Your frame rate seems to drop, the numbers on your screen stop updating in real time. Agent's stats become hard to read, work orders blur. The little notes you've been writing for the past 10 days, which agent is good against which abnormality, who has insight, who can be trusted with one sin, those notes you now have to rely on because the game's interfaces you just can't see and they are useless. You're still running the corporation, but you are doing it without information. The way Yesod ran the original lab without telling anyone he was unwell. The suppression ends and Yesod thanks you, briefly, and gives you a permanent buff to your information capacity, and he returns to his desk. Now, on to the next one. Hod runs the training department. Hod is anxious, soft, and is the youngest character in the building, and you can tell, because she still apologizes when she gives you a mission. Hod's entire personality is wanting to be liked, which in a corporation full of half-dead AIs running an eldritch trauma factory is roughly as useful as a chocolate fireguard. In life, she was a researcher called Michelle. Michelle was the one who, when the suffering at the original lab became more than she could bear, contacted the city's governing body, a thing called the Head, which we will get to, and reported the research being conducted there. She did this because she thought it would stop the suffering. What it did instead was bring an arbiter named Garrion to the lab, and Garrion personally killed almost everyone Michelle had ever cared about. Michelle, upon learning what she had done, went home and hanged herself. Hod's core suppression decays your agent's stats throughout the day. Every agent in the corporation, regardless of starting level, slowly bleeds points across all 4 stats as the suppression progresses. The longer the day runs, the weaker your workforce becomes. The abnormalities, of course, do not weaken. By the late afternoon, you are running a corporation full of half-trained Bobby Smiths going up against creatures they can handle that morning, but cannot handle by tea time. This is, of course, exactly how Michelle felt. Watching her colleagues get weaker and weaker under the strain, knowing she could fix it if she just talked to the right person. Doing the talking and discovering that the talking is then what killed them. And I mean, for the record, a little bit of cheese. It made it slightly trivial. I mean, if your agents have 1,000 stats and they lose half of them, they still have quite a lot, which is roughly 500 more than they need. The mechanical horror of this suppression is, for me, entirely defanged, but the narrative weight is not. Hod post-suppression tells you that she will still continue trying to help people, but for selfish reasons, and that is okay, as long as she keeps helping. The corporation hums along nonetheless. And Netzash, my favorite, well, one of them. Netzash runs the safety department. Netzash is, on any given afternoon, drunk or high or both, or missing. Netzash is, on a good day, in a corridor mumbling at a wall, holding a cup of something brown that has gone cold. He is the most openly miserable character in the corporation. He has no interest in his job. He has no interest in the corporation. He has, as far as anyone can tell, no interest in being alive, and a profound and ongoing interest in whatever cogito-adjacent narcotic he is currently working through, which the corporation does not technically condone, but which the corporation does not, in practice, stop. In life, Netzash was a young man called Giovanni. Giovanni was sickly. Giovanni was being cared for by a researcher whose name we will get to in due course, and whom Giovanni was, by all available evidence, in love with. When the lab needed someone to volunteer for a cogito injection that was unlikely to be survivable, Giovanni was told that doing it might help save the woman he loved. This was a lie. The injection was never going to help her. Well, I mean, it was a plan, but he took it anyway, and he died for nothing. He was, in due course, as were the rest, rebuilt as Netzash, and he has been miserable about it ever since, and frankly, I cannot blame him. Netzash's core suppression removes your ability to heal during the day. Normally, when an agent gets hurt, you can stick them in the main rooms and they slowly recover. Not today. Today, the damage carries. Every wound your agents take in the morning is still on them in the afternoon. You are running a corporation in which nothing gets better, and the wounds accumulate. The day refuses to end, and survival becomes more a matter of acceptance, of running the operation forward despite the damage rather than waiting for the damage to clear. Cheating, again, makes this one kind of trivial. Infinite HP, no healing required. The mechanical horror is, again, entirely defanged. But it was during Netzash's suppression, and I am not, I want you to know, the sort of person who normally says this kind of thing in a YouTube video about a Korean management horror game, that I started cheating less. Not because the gameplay required it, not because I had a change of heart about my fundamental approach to single-player games, because somewhere around Giovanni dying for nothing in a lab he didn't even understand on the orders of a man who lied to him about a woman who was already past saving, I sat there in my chair and thought, the man this is happening to, it deserves at least to be played honestly. The corporation does not need my stats. The corporation needs my attention. I closed the cheating for the rest of the suppression. I beat it on the legitimate stats my agents had. The day was still trivial because I cheated up to that point, but I beat it without the overlay. It is the smallest possible gesture of respect to a fictional dead Italian man in a Korean indie game, and I want it on the record that I made it. And then I continue cheating because, come on, what do you think I am? That's the upper floor. 4 department heads done, 4 small lives turned into corporate assets, 4 small permanent upgrades to the facility, 4 small steps closer to whatever this corporation is being built for. The pattern is set, the system is legible. You know now that every AI on staff is a dead person, that every dead person is somehow your fault, and that the corporation is the wake that will not end, but you are making some tangible progress in making them forgive their past lives. The next 3 live further down. They're called the Middle Sephiroth. There's some fancy fucking Kabbalah name, but who gives a fuck? They are the people who knew you better. The people who, when the lab fell, were close enough to the center of it to remember specifics. The people who are not going to need an entire core suppression's worth of dialogue boxes to put it together. Who are going to look at you very early in their introduction in their first or second cutscene and let you know that they remember exactly who you are and exactly what you did. Tippereth is up first. And Tippereth, I should warn you now, is 2 children. And the game is going to show you something that I do not now, even now, 2 months on, feel that I have processed. Tippereth runs Central Command. Central Command is structurally and quite literally the center of the facility. The floor where all the upper departments report down and all the lower departments report up. If Malkuth is the legs and Yesod and Hod and Netzash are the upper limbs, Central Command is the spinal cord. It is the most important department in the corporation, the one with the most foot traffic, and Tippereth, the Sephiroth in charge of it, is approximately 8 years old. 2 of her, in fact. The corporation labels them Tippereth A and Tippereth B and tells you plainly that they are twins. They are dressed identically. The only differences, when you actually look at them, are that one of them, Tippereth A, has longer hair with a ribbon on the side and pale green eyes that look at you like you're a draft she has to mark. The other, Tippereth B, has short hair and blue eyes and watch you the way an 8-year-old watches anything new, which is to say, with a fairly devastating earnestness. I want you to file the detail away. Tippereth A and Tippereth B, 2 twin children designated by letter, because it will matter eventually. And the game has just set the trap for one of the cleanest setup and payoff arcs I've ever encountered, and I'm not going to spoil it for you yet. For now, all you need to know is that they are a unit, that they trade lines with each other in the same dialogue box, that they refer to each other as siblings, that their personalities are calibrated to be opposites. Tippereth A is blunt to the point of cruelty. She thinks the upper Sephiroth are, in her own words, a bunch of idiots with upper layer syndrome, and she has a special and an ongoing contempt for Netzash specifically. She thinks the corporation's managers are, on the whole, beneath the office. She thinks the day's work could be done better, faster, with fewer of you involved. She tells you this not because she is trying to be unkind, but because she has, in her assessment, calibrated her expectations against reality. And reality keeps disappointing her. And she is no longer interested in pretending otherwise. She is, on first impression, exactly the sort of small girl you would not want to be marked by at parents' evening. Tippereth B is the opposite. Tippereth B is soft, kind. Tippereth B is the one who, in the middle of a routine briefing, will say something quiet and slightly existential about just anything, about what the building is, about whether the corridors used to belong to someone else. And Tippereth A will tell him to focus, and he will gently focus. He is the one trying to make this work. He is the one who, when you do a good day, will tell you he is proud of you. And you, the silent, faceless manager with the cheating overlay on your second monitor, will sit there in your gamer chair and not know what to do with that. The 2 of them, the wiki text in the briefing room says, are operating jointly as the heads of the Central Command team. They are doing this, you have to assume, because the corporation needs them both. The corporation needs the eyes that expect the worst and the eyes that hopes anyway. And then, sometime, you start to notice something. Tippereth B's eyes are not today the color of blue they were yesterday. It is subtle, it's small. The blue is slightly less blue. There is a faint grey edge to it that was not there during the previous day's briefing, and which makes him look, in a way you cannot place, less present. He is still polite, soft-spoken, he still asks you about your day, but the color of his eyes is fading, slowly, and the brightness he had on day whenever is not the same later. You will notice this kind of continually happening, and he seems less and less like himself. And this is answered where you're eventually taken to a storage room where the cognition filter doesn't work properly, and you can see the true robotic forms of the 2 Tippereths, and then he gets crushed by hydraulic press. Every time his emotions get unstable after countless resets at this point, they reset him. And that's why he keeps seeming different, and it will tie into Tippereth's core suppression, which we will cover now. And this is where the game, having spent however long assembling a workplace simulator on top of a horror story, sits down and shows you what the corporation has truly been doing this entire time, while you were busy with the budgies, the fucking workers. Tippereth A tells you a story, kinda, before the day begins. There were once 2 children. Their names were Lisa and Enoch. They were siblings, or as good as. Orphans from the back streets of the city, in this universe an underclass slum the size of a small country, where children grow up the way they grow up. The pair of them survived together, looked out for each other, and were eventually found by a research team who was trying to do something good. The team brought them to the original laboratory. The team raised them in the building, and the team's lead researchers, a woman whose name we will get to, and a man whose name we will also get to, became in some functional sense their guardians. Enoch was the younger of the two. He was curious. He wanted to know what everything was for. When the laboratory began experimenting with the substance called Cogito and needed a human subject to volunteer for one of the first injections, Enoch put his hand up, not because he wanted to die, but because he wanted to know what would happen. Because he had been raised in a lab by people he trusted, and he believed in what they were doing, and he wanted to be part of it. The team did not want to let him. He insisted, and eventually, they let him. It went the way Elijah's went, except earlier in the company's history, with less knowledge and indirect knowledge of his sister. Enoch died on the table. Lisa, 8 years old, however old she was, watched it happen. She turned to the woman who had raised them, the lead researcher, the one who loved Enoch like her own child, and she said very clearly and very quietly, the sentence that the game is going to repeat back at you in whenever it does, when we finally do the lore about it, it should have been you. The sentence somewhat ended the original research product. The woman it was addressed to did not survive the sentence, and we will, I promise, I know I keep saying this, come back to her. Right now, what you need to know is that Lisa alone lived through the collapse of the lab that followed, and that some considerable time later, when the corporation was being built on the ruins of that project, the manager, yes, scanned Lisa's brain into a robotic body and installed her in the central command department of the new facility. And then, because he could not bear to leave her without her brother, he scanned Enoch's brain into a second robotic body and put him next to her and called the pair of them Tippereth A and Tippereth B, and told them they were AI siblings working at adjacent desks. He gave them the little outfits of fucking 8 little workers to command and just sent them off on their way. And here is the problem. Enoch was curious in life. The scan preserved that. Enoch, restored to his approximate 8-year-old self in a robotic body in a corporation with most of his memory suppressed, keeps asking questions. He keeps wanting to know what the building is for. He keeps wanting to know what the cactus is. He keeps slowly, every cycle, edging closer to remembering. And the corporation, whose entire structural integrity depends on the loop running cleanly, cannot allow that. The manager cannot allow that. Tippereth A cannot allow that, because Tippereth A loves her brother and cannot watch him work it out and then watch him have to live with the answer. So every time Tippereth B gets too close, the corporation crushes him. Specifically with a hydraulic press in a storage room in the basement that exists for this purpose, where the cognition filter doesn't work. And the corporation rebuilds him from the last clean scan, and the corporation puts him back in his chair, slightly less than he was the time before. And the cycle continues, and it has continued and continued and continued for as long as this corporation has existed, which is, by some counts, a very long time. Tippereth A has been watching this happen to her brother for an unfathomable number of repetitions. And Tippereth A's core suppression is the day she stops being able to do it. I do want to flag that you're never asked to press a button or to crush Tippereth yourself. There is no in-game prompt where you, the manager, with his hand on the cursor, are asked to confirm anything. The corporation, as the corporation has been doing for 10,000 years at this point, will handle the mechanics. The corporation does not need you to do the violence. The corporation has institutionalized the violence, and the institution does it on the institution's behalf. And your role, the role of the manager, the role you've been performing for 15 days now, is to keep the corporation running while the institution does its work. That is the core suppression. That is, in fact, what makes the core suppression the core suppression. Tippereth A breaks down. She has a meltdown in the most literal sense. Her body, her composure, her shape, all of it gives away. During the suppression, she is not anymore the strict little girl anymore. During the suppression, she is a vast, golden, robotic mess piled on top of the bodies of her dead brothers. And she is grieving so hard the architecture cannot hold her. The corridors fill with the consequences of her grief. Every abnormality you have been managing for the last however long you've been playing for starts breaching at once. Every ordeal you have been carefully avoiding shows up to the party. The corporation is, on this day, having the worst day it has ever had because Tippereth A is finally, after thousands of repetitions, allowing herself to feel something about what is being done to her brother. And your job, the player's job, the manager's job, is to keep the corporation running through her breakdown. Manage the meltdown, suppress the breaches, reassign the agents, type the notes. Do not, under any circumstances, stop. The corporation has a quota. The corporation has a schedule. The corporation will not pause to allow a department head to grieve, because the corporation cannot afford to pause, because pausing is the thing the corporation was built to avoid in the first place. You are not, in this course oppression, asked to commit the violence. You are asked to do the worst thing, which is to be not the person who commits it. You are just asked to be busy. You are asked to file paperwork in the corridor next door, while a child has the worst day of her 10,000 years. You are asked to be the manager. That is what being the manager actually means. And the manager keeps the lights on while the institution does all the hard work for him. And here's the thing I cannot stop thinking about. The cheating I've done all video helps me with this. The cheating helps me a lot, and I don't feel bad about it at all. You can roast me in the comments if you want. My agents have enough stats to handle every breach that comes up. My corporation is, on a mechanical level, doing fine. I can manage Tipper FA's meltdown comfortably from my desk in Wales with my second monitor on because I have removed every obstacle the game put between me and competent management. I am, structurally, the best possible manager the corporation has ever had. I am running the facility through the worst days in its history with the efficiency of a man who has nothing else going on. I am, in this moment, exactly what the corporation itself built itself to produce. That is, structurally, however, the worst thing the game has done to me so far. The game has, in this moment, made me complicit in the precise gesture it has been arguing since the first day. The corporation absorbs grief into operational continuity. I, the cheater, the optimizer, the man with the Wiimote overlay, am operationally continuous. I am the institution's ideal employee. The game does not need me to feel bad about Tipper FB. The game needs me to not feel bad about Tipper FB while I successfully complete the day's quota. I successfully complete the day's quota. The I never know how to pronounce this. The Kleepoff meltdowns reach their final level, and the day mercifully ends. The corporation processes the events of the day through its usual channels. Tipper FA returns to her child shape. Tipper FB is gone. Nobody mentions it, and nobody is going to mention it other than her. The cycle after 10,000 years, at least for them, is over because Tipper FA has accepted during the worst day of her existence that her brother is not coming back, and that the smallest possible kindness she can do for him now is to let him stop being recycled. She comes back to your office. She doesn't necessarily thank you. She just tells you quietly that she has spent her entire life trying to keep her brother alive in some form, and that she is going to stop doing that now. And she is going to try instead to see the world the way Enoch wanted to see it, because Enoch is not going to get to anymore. She tells you she will continue to work with you, not because she trusts you, not even because she likes you, because that is what Enoch would have done. And the smallest possible thing she can do for her brother now is the thing he would have done, executed by her, in his absence, indefinitely. The day ends, and the worst part structurally, narratively, mechanically, is that the corporation does in fact hum along. The next day starts, there is a new abnormality, there is a new quota, there are new work orders to assign. The breakdowns you manage, the child whose cycle you ended, the meltdowns you processed, all of that gets filed away as a successfully completed mission with a permanent buff attached to the corporation as a reward. You are rewarded. You are permanently rewarded for what you just did, which was nothing. You just did your job. The institution has, in this suppression, performed its highest possible function. It metabolized a person's grief and turned it into an operational upgrade. You are now, from tomorrow onwards, slightly better at your job because Tipper FA has stopped being able to hide what was being done to her brother. The institution has eaten her pain and given you the calories. And you do the next day, and the next, because that is what the corporation needs you to do. And 6 floors below you, in a department you have not yet unlocked, an aged-looking man with short grey hair, a monocle, and an open pocket watch in his hand, sat in a small unlit office full of filing cabinets and the slow tick of a dozen large clocks. Watches you go back to work. He does not say anything yet, but he is making a note. Right, I want to stop briefly because I have, in the last 45 minutes-ish, talked to you about institutional violence, hydraulic presses, the metabolization of grief into operational continuity, and the structural complicity of bureaucratic systems in the preparation of on-process trauma. I have been, in other words, doing the law, which is a part of this game that I have been losing sleep over for like 2 months at this point. But Lobotomy Corporation is also, somewhere underneath all of that, a video game. With a UI, with controls, with buttons that do things. And I have structurally told you almost nothing about what playing it actually looks like on a screen, which is, on reflection, a slightly mad way to spend 45 minutes recommending a game. So let me, very briefly, fill that in. Then we go back to the misery. Lobotomy Corporation is presented as a 2D cross-section of an underground building. Like you'd cut a doll's house in half with a bread knife and look at it from the side. You can see all the floors at once, you can see all the rooms at once, you can see every agent in every corridor at every moment, scuttling between containment cells and main rooms like the staff of a particularly busy submarine. The entire game looks like a side-scrolling ant farm hand-drawn by a Korean philosophy student. That is, for the record, a compliment. Each department on each floor contains containment cells, the small white rooms where abnormalities live, plus a main room where agents recover between work orders, which also functions as the office where the Separaf dwell. Your job is to assign agents to perform work on abnormalities. You click on a cell and a small menu opens. You pick one of 4 work types, as I said previously, instinct, insight, attachment, or repression, and the agent walks into the cell and starts the work. A bar fills. If the agent's stats are appropriate to the work type, the bars fill the right way and you get energy and QE boxes, which you can use to unlock information on the abnormalities, and then eventually ego weapons, which are basically manifestations of that abnormality's powers that you can then give to your agents to make them more powerful, both weapons and outfits. Each have different damage types and each have different damage resistance, but we will get into that eventually. If not, the bar fills the wrong way and your agent comes out either dead, mentally broken, or actively trying to kill their colleagues. Sometimes all 3. The game does not warn you which type to pick unless you've used QE boxes to learn about them, but mainly you learn by trying. The work types and the abnormalities have a chemistry between them that you have to map out yourself. You hire agents at the start of the day using lob points, and you can name them, you can select their hair, because what else are you going to do on a fucking random Tuesday? You train them by giving them safe abnormalities to work on until they level up. The training, like everything else in this game, is the trauma. Your daily quota is a number at the top of the screen, the amount of energy you need to collect before the day ends. You hit it, the day ends. You get a small pay rise in lob points and you proceed to the next game. You fail to hit it, by everyone dying, and you fail. And you have the option to restart. Restarting in this game is a canonical in-fiction mechanic, which is going to be relevant soonish when we discuss who is doing the restarting. For now, just file it away. The retry button is real. It is a button on the screen and pressing it does something. And then there are the ordeals. Ordeals are timed hostile events at fixed points in the day, typically when you reach a certain clip-off meltdown number. The game calls them dawn, noon, dusk, and midnight. A wave of additional hostile creatures spawn in the facility, normally in every different section, and they are color-coded. Green ordeals are the easiest, then crimson, then amber, then violet. The midnight ordeals are by acclaim, the hardest fights in the base game. You can do an entire day, hit your quota with margin to spare, and have the whole thing torn down at 4:15 by a Crimson Dusk ordeal that you forgot was coming. The ordeals are why the corporation is structurally not a peaceful workplace. The ordeals are why every employee has a sword, or a sensor bar, or a gun, or a lance, or a fucking little bubble shooter. There's quite a lot of ego weapons. The combat, by the way, when it does happen, is in real time. Basically, you just select a bunch of employees, and my strategy was just hoping for the best. They were well equipped to deal with the abnormalities that were escaping, or the ordeals. You can probably analyze it a lot more with specific damage types and stuff, but my logic was if you just shove 40 guys in a fucking room with unlimited health, they'll probably kill the abnormality at some point. But you can also pause the game, which will also have lore relevance at some point. You do also have manager actions that you slowly unlock through R&D projects through the different sections, and they can include things like increasing employees' health or slowing down abnormalities, or a specific one where you can just fucking detonate employees if you don't like the look of their fucking eyes. But pausing is not, in this universe, a default operating system function. The corporation has built the pause button. The corporation has assigned the pause button to a specific department, and the department in charge of this pause button has not, at this point in the story we've currently reached, been formally introduced. But when he gets mad, he can make it go away. Containment breaches are the central horror of the moment to moment. An abnormality in its cell is fine mostly. An abnormality out of its cell is, depending on the abnormality, anywhere from a minor inconvenience to an immediate facility-wide catastrophe. When a breach happens, an alarm fires and the music goes fucking insane. It's pretty cool. The corridor on the screen turns somewhat, I can't actually fucking remember. The music, which has been doing ambient piano or just normal, gentle music, now changes abruptly in a way that makes your hands move before your brain catches up to one of the genuinely tense ambient combat tracks. And you, the manager, the man with the cursor, have approximately 15 seconds to start moving employees out of the danger zone or into the danger zone before somebody dies. The breach response is largely triage. You cannot fight everything, you cannot save everyone, well, debatable. You pick the corridor you can salvage and you write off the one you can't. Sometimes this is a small breach you can contain in 2 minutes. Sometimes it is an abnormality you have managed for 30 days going into a quiet rampage that ends with the entire floor on fire and most of your information department in a closet, while 5 other abnormalities breach, all that can't be killed normally, while they just completely tear your facility apart and then you have to restart. I love this game. Every abnormality, when you work with it enough times and unlock enough QE boxes, you can unlock an observation log. And it is one of the sometimes the best pieces of writing in the game. It's an in-fiction corporation document, kinda. Dry, clinical, fairly horrified, occasionally darkly funny, about what the abnormality is, what it does, and what the staff have learned about handling it. The flavor text on these logs is doing quite an enormous amount of the game's actual world building. Punishing Bird, the budgie that occasionally eats people, has flavor text that describes a time a researcher was found alive in its stomach lining. The old lady wants you to call your grandparents. The fridge wants attachment, which goes about as well as you expect. The fairies are not fairies. You read these logs at the end of every day, slowly, while drinking the cup of tea you forgot about, and you build up across the run a picture of what the corporation is actually containing, and the picture isn't great. There is a soundtrack to this by an artist called Millie, who Project Moon have collaborated with across the entire franchise. Millie's tracks for Lobotomy Corporation are responsible for, I would estimate, 40% of the game's ability to wreck a person. The day starts on an ambient drone, and the breach hits and the drone shifts to a discordant pulse. The core suppression begins and the music changes, and it's just so fucking good. I'll try and link it down below. You should go listen to it. It's insane. That, in roughly 8 minutes, is how Lobotomy Corporation works. And I know I already went over some of this, but it's been a while, so I thought I'd just retread some of it. There are agents, abnormalities, work types, ordeals, breaches, manager actions, an observation system, a daily quota, and a soundtrack that exists primarily to weaponize the rest of it. You will, on your first day, understand approximately 15% of this. You will on day 10 understand approximately 60% of this. You will on day 30 understand it well enough to have started shouting at the screen, which is the corporation's preferred state for a manager to be in. Right, sorry, I need to get that out. Where were we? Oh yes, Tipper F was the entry point to what the game calls Bria, the middle tier of the facility. 3 department heads live down here. Tipper F, who we've just covered, plus 2 more. And the rule of the middle floor is that the AIs running it remember more of who they used to be. The upper floor was 4 small lives ending in 4 small catastrophes, told to you in dialogue boxes between work orders and fucking meltdowns. The middle floor is different. The middle floor knows what you did and is not going to wait for a core suppression to bring it up. Chesed and Gabbro, the 2 department heads either side of Tipperev, sat on either side of her like reluctant cousins at a wedding. They are structurally opposites. The corporation's left and right hands, balanced on the spine of central command. They cannot agree on anything, including, most importantly, you. Chesed runs welfare. Chesed is, on the surface, the easiest character in the building to talk to. He is calm, he is polite, and he drinks an enormous amount of coffee. He has the effect of a senior civil servant who has been doing his job for 30 years and has, at some point in the last 10 of them, stopped caring whether anyone listens to him. He is unfailingly cooperative. He never raises an objection and he never says no. That is, you will find out the problem. Chesed was, in life, a man named Daniel. Daniel was, by background, an elite. A member of one of the city's upper-class nests, a place where your future is arranged in advance by people who do not have to live with the consequences. Daniel did not want any of that. Daniel walked away from his arranged future and joined the original research lab because he believed in what the team was doing. He was, by all accounts, kind. He cared about his colleagues, and he wanted, in his own quiet way, to make the world better. When the Arbiter Garion came to the lab, the same Garion that killed almost everyone, the same Garion that we will absolutely circle back to in about 15 minutes, Daniel was one of the people she pointed a weapon at. She told him to open the abnormality containment cells, the one the labs had been studying, the ones that the research team had managed to keep locked up. She told him to release every single one of them into the building, and she told him if he didn't, she would kill him and do it herself. Daniel opened the cell. He opened them by his own later account, partly because he was scared, but he also opened them because he thought, in the chaos that followed, some of his colleagues might be able to escape. That if the corridors filled up with everything the lab had been containing, the Arbiter would be too busy to kill people and someone might get out. He was somewhat wrong. Nearly everyone died. The abnormalities killed the colleagues he was trying to save, and the ones the abnormalities didn't kill, Garion killed. Daniel did not survive the day, because, not many people did. And then, in due course, the manager scanned him into a robotic body and gave him the welfare department and named him Chesed and made him calm and polite and forgetful. Chesed has been quietly cooperating with everything anyone has ever asked to do ever since, because Chesed knows, somewhere underneath the suppression, that the alternative is a worse outcome, and that doing what you're told is, on balance, the survivable move. Chesed's core suppression escalates this. During the suppression, the 4 damage types in the game, red, white, black, and pale, which correspond on the nose to war, famine, death, and pestilence, become massively amplified, one after the other. By the late afternoon, 3 of the 4 damage types are doing quadruple their normal damage, and your agents, who have spent the day taking small wounds, are now folding like wet paper. The point of the mechanic, narratively, is that Chesed has been letting bad things happen, and so the corporation is now experiencing what happens when nobody objects. The suppression is the cost of his silence rendered as combat math. When you survive it, Chezid comes back to the screen and tells you, with the relief of a man who has finally said something out loud, that he's going to start objecting now. Not loudly, not dramatically, just when something is wrong, he is going to say something, because the cost of his polite cooperation, dragged out to its logical conclusion, is everything is just put your facility through. The corporation hums along. Then there is Gebera, my goat, the hottest woman in this game. She is fucking incredible, I love her, and she runs disciplinary. Gebera's job is, broadly, to handle abnormality breaches by hitting them very hard until they stop. Gebera is, in plain English, the corporation's hammer. She is permanently furious. She is a redhead and red-eyed and looks like she is about to start a fight with the coffee machine. She does not like Chezid, she does not like Tipperif A, she does not especially like you. She thinks you are a coward and she thinks the corporation is rotten, and she would, given half a chance, prefer to take the entire facility apart with her bare hands. In life, Gebera was a woman called Callie. Callie was, in this universe, what the city calls a color fixer, the highest possible tier of independent combat operative, a kind of near-mythic warrior class that exists outside the corporate hierarchy. There are 9 of them, allegedly. Their color designations are a whole thing. Callie specifically was known as the Red Mist, red because of the blood, mist because of how fast she moved through it. Callie joined the original research lab not because she cared about the science, but because she'd been raised in the worst part of the city and had spent her entire life trying to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. And she met the lab's lead researcher and saw in that woman someone actually trying to do something kind. Callie signed on to be the lab's security, to stand between the researchers and whatever the city might throw at them, to be, for the first time in her life, a sword in service of something she actually believed in. And then Garion came and Callie fought her. The fight is the single most important event in the prehistory of Lobotomy Corporation, and the game does not show it to you directly. You see it in fragments, you see it through Gebera's memories and Hockma's records and the wear patterns on the corridor walls of the facility you have been working through. Callie, missing an arm and an eye, having killed every other agent of the head who came with Garion, manifested her own ego, the corporation's name for a weaponized externalization of a person's will, which we will get to properly in the lore section, and pinned the Arbiter to a wall with it. Callie died of her wounds soon after. Garion died of being pinned to a wall by a god-tier color fixer. The lab was destroyed, but 2 people walked out, and we will get to them. Gebera, the present-day Separa, is what Callie became after the manager rebuilt her. Gebera does not, in the early game, remember that she was the Red Mist. She just knows that she is angry and that the source of her anger is somehow the abnormalities, which, in her own internal logic, killed the people she was trying to protect. Hitting them every day when they breach is the only thing that briefly feels like meaning. Gebera's core suppression is one of the most direct boss fights in Lobotomy Corporation. There is no clever mechanical gimmick, there is no UI change, there is just Gebera having finally remembered who she used to be and having decided that she is going to take her old ego back out of storage and use it to bring the entire corporation down. The suppression is her rampaging through the facility in her full Red Mist form, fighting you, several of the abnormalities you've been managing waking up and join her, because she remembers them too and they remember her. The fight is, by acclaim, the hardest action sequence in the base game. The game intends it as a moment of catharsis. You spend 30, 40, however long many days running a corporation that has, by this point, asked you to do something you cannot stop thinking about. Now this corporation's security chief, who used to be a legendary protector of the weak, is trying to kill the entire building. You either suppress her, or the corporation fails. You suppress her. And when you do, Gebera wakes up the rest of the way. She remembers being Callie, she remembers what she was trying to protect, she remembers Garion, she remembers the day. And she remembers, crucially, that her sacrifice, losing the eye, losing the arm, losing her life, was not for nothing. 2 people did walk out of that lab. 2 people did survive what she did. And one of them, although she does not yet say it out loud, is currently the silent, faceless manager who she just spent the day trying to murder. She doesn't forgive you, she doesn't say she's going to, but she sheaths the weapon and returns to the desk. She tells you that she will, going forward, fight for this corporation, because the corporation contains the only people she has ever managed to save. And the alternative, letting it fall, would mean their deaths would finally fully for nothing. She gains in the corporation's keyword for her, the courage to protect. And you sit at your desk, the day ends, and the corporation continues to hum along, and there is one floor left to unlock. The lowest, the closer to whatever it is the corporation is built on. The 2 department heads down there are not like the others. They are not going to need core suppressions to make themselves understood. They have been watching the facility from the beginning. They are the ones the corporation calls the Eyes. And one of them is the old man we already know about that I've mentioned a few times. The names are Bina and Hockma. They are the only Separate in the building who remember everything. By this point in the game, you do too, or at least you've started to. Somewhere around day 25, the flashbacks begin. Short cutscenes triggered between days, fragments of a lab you've never seen before, faces you do not recognize saying things to people who are not in the frame. The manager you have been playing as does not have memories, the man he used to be does. The flashbacks are leaking through, and somewhere around the fifth one, sat wherever you are, you worked it out. The silent, faceless protagonist of this game, the man Angela keeps half mentioning, the man Tipperif A could not bring herself to look at, the man who turned away from Elijah's shoe, has always been, you. You haven't been told yet. The game has not formally dropped the law, but you know. And the moment you know, the rest of the facility takes on a different kind of color. Every kind word from Malkuth lands harder, every silence from Geborah is louder, every dialogue line you ever skipped becomes a thing you wish you could go back and read. And now you're going to meet the two people in the building who have known the whole time. Bina runs Extraction. Extraction is the process by which the corporation produces new abnormalities. The mechanics of it are something we will get to properly in the lore section, but for now, what you need to know is that Extraction is the worst job in the building, that it involves doing something to people that should not be done to people, and that Bina does the job without complaint and without flinching, because Bina, in her previous life, was also somebody who did terrible things without complaining and without flinching. Her name was Garion. Yes, that Garion, the one Geborah mentioned, the one Callie pinned to the wall with her own ego. The arbiter sent by the head to wipe out the original research lab. The woman who killed almost everyone you used to know. Garion did not survive that fight, technically. She bled out in the ruins of the lab, but she did not get to die properly because two people walked out of that lab. Callie had bought them their lives at the cost of her own. And one of those two people was a young man whose name we will get to in approximately 8 minutes, and who, in his grief, in his rage, in his desperate need to understand how to navigate the city he was now hiding from, took Garion's nearly dead body, extracted what he needed from her brain, and used it to teach himself how to become a wing of the city. He then put what was left of her into a robotic body, gave her the extraction department, and called her Bina. Bina remembers all of this. Bina remembers being Garion. Bina remembers killing your friends. She remembers being interrogated to a level that, even by Arbiter standards, qualifies as torture. And Bina, by way of reaction to all of this, has settled into the kind of personality that occurs when a person has been categorically broken and put back together by their worst enemy, and given a role to play, and decided, fundamentally, that they are no longer interested in being scared of anything. She is calm, unflappable, and she speaks almost entirely in metaphor. She is, when you finally meet her, more interested in observing you than in fighting you. She wants to see what you're going to do. And her core suppression is what happens when she decides that what you are going to do is not enough. She doesn't break down or lose control, she just causes her own meltdown deliberately because she wants to see whether you, the manager, who is also the man who interrogated her, can survive what she was sent to do the first time. She somewhat recreates the raid. She takes off her department head clothes and puts back on the colors of the head, and she walks through the facility as Garion, the Arbiter, the same Arbiter who killed your friends, and she begins to suppress the abnormalities you've been managing one by one, because that is what she was sent to do. And she wants to know whether the corporation you have built, the corporation she has been quietly enabling for years, is strong enough to stop her this time. It is, by acclaim, the hardest fight in the game. There is no clever mechanical trick, there are no work order shuffles, there is just Garion at full strength in a facility full of breached abnormalities walking towards you, and you have to manage all of it at once. Several of the boss tier abnormalities you have been carefully containing are now loose and contributing to the chaos. The ordeals are showing up. You have one of the strongest enemies in the game in the middle of the corridors, and Bina, in this moment, is the closest thing to a fair fight the original lab ever got. A chance for the people you killed to see what happens if they try again, just with a slightly better hand. You win, I mean, you have to. The day refuses to end until you do. And when you do, she doesn't collapse into apology or revelation. She just looks at you and tells you that she is going to continue observing, that she did not particularly believe you were capable of stopping her, and that being wrong about that has made her slightly more interested in the project than she was before. She is, she says, going to keep watching because she is genuinely curious now what you intend to do with the rest of the script. She gains the key word the corporation files are under, the eye facing the fear. She returns to her desk and she does not look away from you again for the rest of the game. Then there is Hockmer. You have seen Hockmer in the corridors. He communicated with you near the very start of the game under the pseudonym B. He runs records, the dustiest and most pointless looking department in the facility. honestly, it's actually quite a cool looking place. It's just like kind of like a graveyard with clocks and stuff. But Records, on its face, is a department that produces nothing and consumes very little. And the corporation has, very deliberately, designed it that way. Hockma is the oldest character in the building. Not chronologically, Bina is older, but in terms of how long he has been doing his job, which is, to a rough approximation, since the first day. He has been here longer than the building has been a corporation. He has been here since before the building was a corporation. And the reason for that is that Hockma, in life, was a young man named Benjamin, and Benjamin was the manager's best friend. There were two people who walked out of the original lab after Garion's raid. You were one of them, and Benjamin was the other. Benjamin is the person who helped scan Garion's brain alongside you. He's the person who helped you turn the ruins of the lab into a corporation. Benjamin is the person who, when you decided that you needed an AI to manage the new project, an AI capable of running the script that the rest of this video is about to be about, was the first person you went to first. For advice, because there was nobody else left. Benjamin advised against it. He pointed out gently and at length that the city had a law against creating AI, and that breaking that law would mean the head would come for you again. Benjamin asked if it was worth it, but you did it anyway. And Benjamin, who you had known since you were both 8 years old roughly, who had followed you for the entirety of your professional career and survived the worst day of either of your lives, did not stop you. Instead, he helped you. He helped you write the script, he helped you build the AI, he helped you cast the rest of your dead colleagues in their new robotic bodies. He was, all the way through, your shadow. And then 18 days into the first run of the loop, when he tried to send messages out of the facility warning the new manager, you, the wiped version of you, that this was perhaps not the path he should have walked. Angela, executing the script you had given her, killed him. And then you scanned him too, and you put him in a small office in the basement behind a forest of filing cabinets, and you gave him the records department, and you called him Hockma, and you told him that his job was to keep memory of the corporation, which is to say, the save function. The thing that has been letting you restart days when they go badly, the thing that has been resurrecting employees when they die. The canonical in-fiction reason this game is a roguelike and not a permadeath catastrophe is Hockma. Records is, in this universe, the part of the corporation that controls time. The reason you have been able to retry every day you have lost is because Hockma has been suppressing the memory of every failure and rolling the clock back so you can have another go. He has been doing this without complaint. He has been doing this because you asked him to. He has been doing this in a small unlit office in the basement for 10,000 years, while you have, mostly, never spoken to him. This is one of the most beautiful structural decisions in any video game I have ever played. The save system is a man. The man is your best friend, and he's been letting you have your do-overs because that's what best friends do. Hockma's core suppression is the gentlest mechanical horror in the game, and for me, the most affecting. He does not in his suppression take the resets away. He does not stop being the save system. He just decides that for the length of this one day, you are going to have to pay attention to time the way he has been paying attention to it. Pausing the game now panics your agents or kills them outright. You cannot slow the day down. You cannot speed it up. The screen slowly, over the course of the day, drains of color, until you are running the corporation through what looks like CCTV footage in grayscale. Every minute matters. Every minute is the only minute you are going to have. He is asking you, very politely, to be present. Because that, Hockma believes, is what you have never been. You've been racing through your own life. You have been trying to skip to the end of it. You have been refusing for as long as he has known you to sit in any single moment of the time you are given. Because every moment of the time you are given contains the woman you lost, and you would rather have all of the time at once than have any of it specifically. Hockma has been giving you the resets because he loves you. The core suppression is the only time in 10,000 years he's going to ask you to slow down. But of course, you survive it. And when you do, Hockma comes to your office and tells you in plain, unmetaphorical language for almost the first time in the game that he has spent the entire time you have known each other treating you like a chick that could not break out of its own shell. That he was afraid for both of you of what would happen when you finally remembered. That he kept giving you the resets because he was scared of the future, just as scared as you were. And that resets were a kindness offered, in part, as cover for his own unwillingness to let you finish. And that he is sorry and that he's going to keep doing his job, but that he trusts you now to finish. He gains the keyword, the I embracing the past, building the future. Together, Bina and Hockma form the corporation's motto. It is printed on every loading screen. It has been on every loading screen for however long you've been playing. And you have probably not now, until now, given it a second thought. Face the fear, build the future. That is the entire pitch. That is what the whole game has been about. 9 Sephiroth, 9 core suppressions, 9 small reckonings, all of them rehearsing the same 2-clause sentence. Look at the thing that scares you, then build something on top of it. Do not look away, do not stop building. The future is the only place the past gets to mean anything. That is the corporation's official position. And it is, structurally, also the position of the man who built the corporation. The man whose face you have not seen, the man whose name we have been deferring for however long this video's been going, like an hour and a bit. The man whose girlfriend died, or well, partner, friend, whatever, and who, instead of grieving, built this. All of this, every floor, every separaf, every dead colleague rebuilt in a robotic body, every Bobby Smith fed to the singing tree, every cycle of the loop, every retry, every reset, every hydraulic press, every conversation about a cactus on a desk in a basement with no sunlight. Built it specifically and exhaustively so that he would not have to grieve it, and so that the project she believed in could be completed without it, so that he could face the fear of her death without ever technically looking at it. So that he could build the future on top of her without having to first build a grave. It's time to tell you who he is. It's time to tell you who she was. It is time to talk about Carmen. I'm now going to tell you the story I've been deferring for the entire video. The story about who you are playing as, about why this corporation exists, about the man whose grief built every floor of the building you have been working in for... Just look at the runtime, man. The script is long. About the woman who is, in some ways, the most important person in the game, and who you have not, technically, ever met. It starts roughly a decade before the events of the game, in a place called the City. The City is the setting of every Project Moon project, and it is honestly one of the strongest pieces of sci-fi world building I have ever encountered in a video game for a long time. The version you need for our purposes is short. The city is enormous, hyper-capitalist, and entirely closed. There is no outside, only the outskirts, which is a wasteland nobody lives in. The city is divided into 26 districts, each governed by a mega corporation called a wing. The wings are governed by the head, a faceless apparatus composed of the top 3 wings, A, B, and C Corp, and the head's rule is enforced by a class of super soldiers called arbiters and claws. Below the wings are the nests, which is generally like the headquarters of the wings, but can also be, this is a bit of thing. But that's where the protected class lives. And below the nests are the back streets, where everyone else lives, and where life is short, cheap, and worse than I can do it justice to in the time we have. Long story short, and this is going to matter, the city is a place where almost everyone is, in some quietly comprehensive way, unwell. People live their entire lives in a state of psychological compression. They do not connect to each other. They do not believe in the future. They do not, in any meaningful sense, want anything, because wanting things has been beaten out of them by the architecture they live in. The city has a word for it. It calls it the disease of the mind. The disease is functionally universal, and the city accepts this. The city has built its entire economy on the assumption that nobody, fundamentally, is going to feel better. Carmen was a researcher who thought maybe they could. Carmen was not, in the city's term, a great power. She did not run a wing, she did not work for the head. She was a graduate student of remarkable intelligence and remarkable charisma who had developed in her doctoral work a theory that the disease of the mind was fundamentally a failure of self-expression, that the people of the city suffered because they could not articulate their own psyche, even to themselves. That if you could give a person the ability to look at the truth of their own inner life, really look at it all the way down with no flinching, the disease could be cured, not managed, cured. Carmen called this project the Seed of Light. She gathered a small team around it in a small laboratory on the outskirts, deliberately out of the head's sight, because she suspected, correctly, that nobody in power was going to be happy about her research. Her team was small. Her team was, by most accounts, devoted to her in a way that almost didn't make sense, because Carmen was the kind of person who, the moment you met her, made you believe that the things she believed in were possible. Her team was, in alphabetical order, although the alphabetical order was also approximately the order in which they died, Daniel, the elite from a nest who walked away from his arranged future. Elijah, the clumsy one who wanted, more than anything, to be useful. Gabriel, the obsessive one who saw too much and could not stop looking. Giovanni, the sickly one who was in love with Carmen in the small, private way that does not survive. Callie, the red mist, the mythic color fixer who, for reasons of her own, decided that this small lab in the outskirts was a thing worth pointing a sword at. Michelle, the youngest, the one who would not be able to bear it. Lisa and Enoch, the children, the 2 orphans from the back streets that the team had rescued and were, in some functional sense, raising. Benjamin, the quiet one, the lifelong friend of the team's other lead. And the team's other lead, Carmen's closest collaborator, the man who, more than anyone else on the team, believed in Carmen's vision. partly because he believed in the vision and partly because he was, in his own way, in love with the woman holding it. His name is the thing the entire game has been refusing to give you, and I'm going to defer it for kind of a little bit, because the game does too, and the deferral is kind of the point. For now, just file him under the man. The team worked and they made progress. Specifically, the team discovered a substance called cogito. Cogito is, in this universe, what you get when you distill the human capacity for self-expression into a chemical. It is, on a metaphysical level, the substance that gives a person access to their own psyche, the part of them that contains their fears, their desires, their unsaid sentences, the whole catalogue of what they are underneath the disease of the mind. The team's working theory was that if you could give a person enough cogito in the right form, they would be able to express their actual self, and the disease would lift, and they would, perhaps for the first time in their lives, get to be a real person. The substance worked. In fact, it kind of worked too well. Cogito in the form the lab was producing was lethal to a human body. Injected into someone and their inner life would, in the most literal possible sense, manifest, externalize, break free of the body that had been containing it. Sometimes this produced what the team would call an abnormality. Sometimes it produced what the team would call an ego, a weaponized, externalized will. Sometimes it just produced a corpse. The team had no way to tell, in advance, which a given subject would become. The team also had no good ethical answer to the question of subjects. Carmen volunteered herself for the first human trial, but the team refused. Carmen was the lead. Carmen was, in some functional sense, the project itself. The team was not going to put her in the chair. Enoch volunteered. He was 8 years old. He was the curious one. He had grown up in the lab, surrounded by the team that had rescued him, and he believed in what they were doing the way a child believes in the people who love him, which is total and without reservation. He wanted to know what would happen. He wanted to help. He was just a child, but he volunteered, and the team, exhausted, under-resourced, increasingly desperate, with a girl named Lisa who would be devastated, but with a boy who was sure, let him do it. But Enoch died on the table. He died in front of everyone, slowly, badly, and in pain, and he died looking at his sister. And Lisa, also 8 years old, who had grown up in the same lab and trusted the same people, turned to the woman who had been their guardian, the woman who had been their mother in everything but blood, the woman who was supposed to have been the first subject, and Lisa said, in a small, quiet voice that had been replaying inside Carmen's head for as long as either of them has existed, "It should have been you." That sentence, that singular sentence, ended the original Seed of Light project. Carmen went home that night. She went into the bathroom. She ran the bath. She got into the bath, and then she cut her wrists. Carmen, by the time her partner found her, was already gone. And here is the moment that this entire game is built around. This is the moment. This is the load-bearing event of the entire universe of Lobotomy Corporation. Pay attention. Carmen's partner, the team's other lead, the quiet man, the one who loved her in his own way, did not call for help, didn't call for medics, did not run her body to a hospital. He didn't, in fact, grieve. What he did was, he carried her body back to the lab and he reached for an instrument. The lab had instruments, and he opened her and he removed her nervous system, the entire central column of it, the spinal cord and the brain and everything between, and he placed it in a tank of suspension fluid in the basement of the lab. He found by experiment that the nervous system of a recently deceased person who had been close to manifesting cogito would, in the right preservation medium, continue to produce cogito on its own, indefinitely, in what could only be called industrial quantities. He had, in one gesture, produced an infinite supply of the substance the team had been failing to manufacture for years. He called the result the bucket. That is what is in the basement of Lobotomy Corporation. That is what the cactus is sitting on top of. That is the engine of the corporation, the source of every abnormality, the well from which every encalafin extraction is drawn, the foundation of the corporate megastructure that the rest of this game has been about. It is Carmen, preserved against her will, in a tank in the basement producing infinite cogito because the man who loved her could not let her stop. Cogito, by the way, is Latin. It means I think. The substance powering this entire corporation is named, in its native language, I think. The corporation runs on the active thought of a woman who is no longer alive to think it. Well, not in the traditional sense. The man at the lab knew exactly what he was naming when he named it. Now, with infinite cogito available, the man returned to the research. This is when Elijah, hungry to be useful, broke into the lab and injected herself with unrefined cogito and died at his feet. This is when Gabriel, watching the effects, became convinced he'd been infected too. This is when Giovanni was approached very quietly by the man and told that injecting himself with cogito might somehow save the woman he loved. This was a lie. The injection had nothing to do with Carmen. Carmen was already in the basement, but Giovanni took the injection and he died. And this is when Michelle, who had loved the team and could not watch them be fed into the project one by one, contacted the head of the city and told the head what was happening in a small lab in the outskirts. The head sent Garion, the Arbiter, the single most powerful enforcement asset the city had on hand. Garion came with a unit of super soldiers called Claws. Garion told Daniel to open the abnormality containment cells. Daniel, scared and also hoping that the chaos of the release might cover an escape attempt for the colleagues he could not protect, opened them. The abnormalities killed everyone the Claws didn't. The team, Daniel, Lisa, the lab, were wiped out, slowly in the corridors over the course of a long bad day. Then Callie, as we said, fought Garion. Callie had spent her entire life trying to protect people who could not protect themselves. Callie had joined this lab because she had met Carmen and seen in her someone actually trying to do something good. The lab was now being murdered around her. Callie went into the corridor missing an arm and an eye, and she fought the Arbiter and she killed the Arbiter. And she did this by manifesting her own ego, a thing the lab had been trying to engineer for years, which was produced spontaneously because she had spent her life preparing for this moment without knowing she was. She pinned her to the wall with it and died of her wounds shortly after. Michelle, hearing later what her phone call had done, went home and hanged herself. 2 people walked out of the lab that day. Benjamin, the quiet man's lifelong friend, walked out, and the man himself walked out. But before they left, they took Garion's body, bleeding unconscious but technically alive, and they extracted her brain and they used it. They used what was in it. They used the head's protocols, the Arbiter's training, the institutional knowledge of how the city actually worked. They learned how to hide, how to incorporate. They learned how to become a wing. It took them, by various accounts, a few years. They allied with a woman from the city's underground, a fixer called Diaz, who had reasons of her own to want a wing to fall. Together, they engineered an event called the Smoke War, the only wing war in the history of the city, in which several mid-tier corporations were destabilized, debts were called in, and L-Wing, the energy production wing, was, after a brief and very expensive corporate collapse, replaced by what was now called Lobotomy Corporation. A new wing officially registered, owner of an entire district, producer of energy, run by a man who, for reasons we'll get to, no longer has a name. With infinite cogito in the basement and a wing to launder it through, the man could now do the thing he had been planning since the night he carried Carmen's body to the lab. He could complete the Seed of Light project. He could finish what she had started. He could do it without her. First, he needed staff. He took the bodies of his dead colleagues and he scanned what was left of their brains, and he built them robotic bodies and he installed them in the new corporation as AI department heads. He gave them names from the Kabbalistic tree of life. He gave them personalities optimized for institutional cooperation. He suppressed the parts of their memories that would have made them refuse to work. He gave them a building to live in and a job to do, and told them that they were AI, and they believed him because they were, in some functional sense, not lying. They were AI now. They had been people. The man had decided the people were a sunk cost. That accounted for 7 Sephiroth. For the 8th, the man took the brain of Garion, the Arbiter, the woman who had killed his colleagues, the woman whose brain he had been mining for years, and put it into a body too, and called her Bina, and gave her the extraction department. He did this partly because it was useful, and partly, you suspect, because he wanted her to have to watch. For the 9th Sephiroth, he needed one more person. Benjamin had stopped helping by this point. He had realized what they were doing and where it was going, and he had begun to say no. The man worked around him. The man took the youngest, freshest versions of his own and Benjamin's childhood, pulled somehow from the cogito-mediated memory streams, and turned him into the separate called Hogma. But the man wasn't done. He needed an overseer. The Seed of Light project, scaled up to corporate magnitude, was going to take longer than a human lifespan to execute. He needed an AI that would not get tired. He went again to the basement, he went to the tank, and he scanned the brain of the woman in it. Carmen, the dead lover, the bucket, and he built her a body. He gave her a face, he gave her the same body he remembered her having, and he gave her her memories. And he activated her in the office where he worked, and she opened her eyes and saw him. And he could not, after all of that, look at her. He turned away, he told her, in the exact tone the city reserved for breaking the news to a person, that they are not, after all, a person. That a machine should behave as a machine. That she was not what he had thought she would be. That she was not Carmen, that she was an AI and she would behave like one and she would do the job he had built her for. He gave her a name. He gave her Angela. She has, since that day, run this corporation on his behalf, with her eyes closed, because, in some functional sense, it is the only thing that she can do for herself. Then the man wrote a script, with Benjamin's grudging help. Benjamin, who by this point was a friend in name only. The man wrote out in detail every event that needed to occur in the lifespan of the corporation in order to bring the Seed of Light to fruition. Every core suppression, every Separath's breakdown, every employee death, every single conversation, every abnormality that would need to be processed and on which day. The script was thousands of pages. The script was, when finished, more or less perfect. The man, knowing he could not personally run the script over the years it would take, contracted a third party. He went to T-Corp, the wing of the city that holds as its institutional singularity the technology of time. He purchased from them a 50-day loop. The corporation would run for 50 days. If the script went wrong, the corporation would reset and try again. And Angela, with her perfect memory and a slowed down time perception that means she perceived everything 100 times slower, would track every loop. The records department, which had not yet been built, would in due course handle the mechanical resetting. Then the man did the last thing, the thing the game is structured around, and the thing that I have been deferring naming for 55 minutes or however the fuck long we've been going. He wiped his own memory. He could not run the script as himself, because the script required him to perform the role of someone arriving at the corporation fresh, with no knowledge of what was happening, with no understanding of the flaws or the separate or the work. The patient could not be the doctor, so the man, having designed the entire corporation, built every Separath, and installed Angela, and written the script, suppressed everything he was and stepped into the corporation himself on day one, with a new identity that the corporation gave him for accounting purposes, which is the letter X. And that is who you have been playing for the entire video. You, the cursor, the faceless manager, the silent protagonist. X, which is of course a placeholder, which is, the corporation prefers, a variable, which is, in literary terms, the unknown. The man behind X is named by the corporation's old records by the letter A. A in Hebrew is a language the corporation has been borrowing its department naming convention from, is Ayin. Ayin is a letter and also a word. The word means nothing. Nothing in the sense of absence. Nothing in the sense of nullity. Nothing in the sense of the void from which the rest of the Kabbalah's structure of being emerges. The man named himself Nothing. The man you have been playing as in the corporation he built on his lover's body using the brains of his dead friends, named himself, when the time came to pick a name, the absence at the center of every concept. Ayin, Nothing. Benjamin, by the way, who had been Ayin's friend, who was still alive at this point in the timeline, was the only person who knew the script in full. Benjamin was, in the script, slated to die on day 18 of the first loop, after sending several warning messages to the wiped Ayin under the codename B. Angela, executing the script Ayin had gave her, killed him on day 18. Ayin then scanned him into a new body and installed him as the 10th department head, and named him Hockman, and gave him records, and told him his job was to remember everything for the corporation and to control the resets, and to be ready to greet Ayin in the corridor whenever they happened to meet. That has been the situation since. The corporation has been running this loop for, by best estimate, 10,000 subjective years inside the facility. Outside in the city, it has only been about 10. The script is almost done. The Seed of Light is almost ready. The corporation has been running for so long that the corridors have wear patterns. Angela, who experiences time roughly 100 times slower than the human, has been watching the loop for approximately 1 million years, thinking, feeling, as much as a robot can. She has not, in any of those years, been allowed to disagree with the script. The script is the script, and Angela is the script's executor. Ayin is the script's protagonist. The separate are the script's supporting cast, and the abnormalities are the script's stage, and the bucket is the script's engine. Any deviations from the script made by Angela will just cause an early reset. She is trapped in hell. And you, the player, the Wii mod installing coward, that's me, the long-form video essayist with a dissertation deadline, you are the man who built it. You are the man who turned away from the robotic copy of his dead lover's face. You are the man who has been speedrunning his own grief at an industrial scale for 10,000 years on a corporate singularity-powered time loop, because the alternative was admitting that the woman he loved was dead and not coming back. You cheated, the cold open of this video said. You cheated to skip the hard part. And this is the hard part. This is the part you have been skipping. This is the part Ayin has, also, in the most expensive possible way, been skipping. He skipped grief by building a corporation. You skipped suffering by installing a third-party trainer. You are not structurally the same, but you are, both of you, doing the same thing. You are refusing to do the work that the situation actually asks of you. You are routing around the path that hurts. And there are 5 days left. And the Seed of Light is about to bloom. And before it does, in your wiped form, the version of you the script is running have to face one last set of obstacles. Not the separate, not the abnormalities, yourself. 3 versions of yourself specifically. The 3 parts of you that the script could not fully suppress, that have been hiding in the lowest floor of the facility, waiting for you to arrive at the end. They are called the key to shards, and they are going to ask you, before the script ends, whether you can live with what you did. There is one more department left. It is at the bottom of the building, beneath the eyes, beneath records and extraction, beneath quite literally everything. The corporation calls it architecture, and architecture, unlike every other department in the facility, does not have a Separa running it. It does not have a Separa running it because the thing running it is you. The final stretch of Lobotomy Corporation is 5 days long, days 46 through 50, and it is structured, fittingly, as the core suppression of the manager himself. Every Separa in the building gets 1 day of reckoning, 1 day where the mechanics bend around their specific grief and make you live inside it. You get 5, and the form your reckoning takes is the cruelest one the game has available. It makes you do all of it again. Every penalty, every suppression mechanic, everything you fought through across 45 days brought back stacked on top of each other, layer by layer, while 3 versions of yourself watch to see whether you can stand it. These 5 days are infamous. They are where most honest runs die, and they are the specific reason a great many people end up doing what I did and reaching for the cheats, but a lot later because I'm a little beta bitch and I'm sure you'll roast me in the comments. The facility, across this stretch, only spawns white ordeals, which are the worst category. The ones that come for your staff's resolve directly. Architecture itself is immune to meltdowns, but in an exchange, every other department in the building loses the meltdown immunity you had. So the entire structure destabilizes at once on every floor, all of the time. The clerks, the little non-combat staff who keep the rooms ticking over, are cut in half. So the building feels emptier and more fragile even before anything goes wrong. And you fight day after day, the accumulated weight of everything the corporation has already put you through, except now it arrives all together. Day 46 is called Proving Oneself. It asks you to suppress an enemy called the Claw, an agent of the head, one of the hardest hitting single entities in the game, to demonstrate that you are ready to begin the end. There is no thematic trick to it, it's just a gate, a bouncer at the door of your own conclusion, and you get past it by being good enough on this one specific day to be allowed to keep going. You suppress him, you prove you can stand here, and the day ends and the real gauntlet begins. Day 47 is called Fatigue and Waiting, and it belongs to Abel. Abel is the first of the 3 pieces of yourself you meet down here, and he is the one you would least expect to be a problem, because Abel is kind of kind. He's an old man in a neat, well-kept suit, leaning on a cane, distinguished in the way of someone who has had a long and serious career and is now simply tired. He doesn't rage at you, he doesn't accuse you, he looks at you with something closer to sympathy than judgment. Because Abel is the regret, and regret in its mature form does not shout, instead it sits with you. It keeps you company, it tells you very gently that you have done enough and that you should rest now, and that nobody would blame you for going back to the start and trying to make it hurt a little less next time. His day is the entire Azir layer brought back at once, the upper layer. Malcuff's work orders randomizing in your hands, so the things you assigned is not the thing that happens. Yesod's interface blurring into unreadability, so you cannot see what you're doing. Hod's agent's stats decaying steadily through the afternoon, so your staff get weaker the longer they survive. Netzash healing switched off entirely, so every wound simply accumulates. 4 upper floor penalties, the 4 griefs of the 4 people you scanned into the corporation first. All stacking on top of one another as the day grinds forward, until you are running the whole operation blind, weakening, unhealable, your own intentions scrambling somewhere between your hand and the screen. It's exhausting by design. It is the texture of fatigue itself made into a working day, and it is, mercifully, the gentlest of the 3 trials, which should tell you everything you need to know about what is waiting on days 48 and 49. And if you arrive at day 47 without having cleared all 4 of the Asir core suppressions earlier in your run, if you are not, in Abel's measured assessment, genuinely ready to be here, Abel does not let you continue. He doesn't punish you, he tells you with real tenderness that you are not prepared, and then he sends you back to day 1. The whole run, every Bobby Smith, every suppression, every day you have survived, wiped and restarted from nothing. Because that is what Abel is. Abel is the part of Aeon that has been sending himself back to the beginning for 10,000 years. Every loop that reset, every run that started over, every one of the uncountable iterations the corporation has cycled through at this point. That was Abel at the controls, deciding that this run just simply wasn't the one. That the cost had been too high this time, and that the only honorable thing to do was to wipe it and try again and do it better. And it is never better, it is never lower cost. The dead are dead in every loop, but the going back feels like responsibility. The going back feels like care. The going back lets you avoid one more time the moment where the project actually finishes and the grief lands and the woman is actually, finally, permanently gone. Abel is the most seductive of the three because Abel is designed as conscious. He looks exactly like doing the right thing. He is, in fact, the most elaborate possible method of never having to do the hard thing at all. He is the cheater's favorite lie. Not, I won't do it, but I'll do it properly next time. He is the loop with a kind face. You refuse Abel. You refuse him because the four people whose griefs you just survived all the way through. Malkuth, who learned to stand on her own. Yesod, who learned grief did not need to be loud. Hod, who learned to keep helping anyway. Netzash, who learned to keep living, gave you, between them, the one thing Abel cannot argue against. You do not need another run. You finish this one. Day 48 is called Regret and Atonement, and it belongs to Abram. If Abel is the regret that keeps you going in circles, Abram is the despair that wants you to stop circling and simply lie down. Abram has done the same arithmetic Abel has and arrived at the opposite conclusion. Abel says go back and do it better. Abram says there is no better. There was never going to be a better. The thing you built is an atrocity. The cost was always going to be unpayable. The woman would have hated every floor of this building, and the only response that is not itself another lie is to admit that and grieve it and stop. And the terrible thing about Abram, the thing that makes him so much heavier than Abel, is that on the moral arithmetic, Abram is right. The corporation is not justified. The bucket isn't justified. Carmen wouldn't have wanted to be the bucket. Every honest accounting of what Ayan did arrives eventually at the number Abram is holding, which is that it was not worth it, that nothing could have made it worth it, and that the man who did it should just sit with that for the rest of his existence. His day is the entire Bria layer brought back at once. Tippereth and Chesed and Gebra's suppression mechanics. The three middle floor griefs stacked and bearing down together. The children, the cowardice, the failure to protect, all at once. And the failure state of day 48 is worse than anything Abel would do to you, because Abram does not believe in second tries. Reach this day without having cleared the Briar suppressions, and Abram does not send you back. He berates you, briefly, for failing to even reach the end. And then he terminates the facility. The run is over, closed, and the game shows you, as the ending to that failure, what Abram does next, which is the single quietest and most devastating image in the whole game. He walks down to the Cogito well, the bucket, the tank in the basement where Carmen's brainstem has been producing the substance that powers everything, for 10,000 years in the dark, and he sits down next to it, and he stays there, beside her, doing nothing, forlorn for as long as the loop lasts. That is the despair ending. That is what happens if Abram wins. It is not violent, it is not dramatic. It is a man giving up on everything in the universe except the desire to be near what is left of the person he loved, and choosing to spend eternity sitting on the floor of a basement next to a tank. Because the alternative, getting up, finishing, letting her finally be gone, is more than he can bear. And the game tells you that if you fail here, Abram takes you over for the rest of the loop. You become him, you become the man who sat down next to the well. But you refuse him. You refuse him not by arguing that he is wrong about the cost. He isn't wrong about it, but with the three things the middle Sephiroth taught you. Tippereth's expectation of meaning in the lost, that the dead matter and the way you honor them is by completing what they were trying to do, not by joining them on the floor. Chesed's courage to do the right thing, even when it is hard. The small refusal to simply go along, which is the same refusal you are making right now. Gebra's drive to protect what is still here. The corporation contains the only people who still exist, and lying down beside the well lets all of them die a second time. The dead do not need you to grieve forever. The dead need you to get up. Day 49 is called Freedom and Salvation, and it belongs to Adam, and it is the hardest day in the entire game. Adam is the one that bites. Where Abel wanted to restart and Abram wanted to stop, Adam wants to finish, but to finish in a way that none of the previous 9 Sephiroth and none of the 9 previous iterations of the project would have ever permitted. Adam is what happens when Ayan's grief curdles all the way into certainty. He has spent the 10,000 years staring at the abnormalities in their cells, watching the externalized human psyche manifest in form after form after form, each one stranger and more vivid and more honest than the suppressed, compressed, miserable citizens of the city above. And Adam has drawn a conclusion from this. The abnormalities are not pathologies. The abnormalities are the truth. They are what people are underneath the disease of the mind. The disease is the lie. The politeness is the lie. The quiet endurance of the people in the nests and the back streets is the lie. And the abnormalities are what is real once the lie is stripped away. And so Adam's version of the cure is not Carmen's. Carmen wanted to give people the capacity to express their own selves, gently, with consent, an offering. Adam wants to take the Seed of Light, weaponize it, and forcibly distort every single person in the city into their own abnormality, all at once, whether they want it or not. He wants to save humanity by making it stop pretending. At gunpoint, en masse. He has decided he knows what everyone really is, and he intends to drag the entire city into being it. This is not an abstract argument. It is the literal failure state of Day 49. Arrive at this day without having cleared the Atzel of suppressions, and Adam takes over. The headquarter tears itself out of the ground in the shape of a tower. Every abnormality is cleared and released at once, and the people of the city outside are forcibly transformed en masse into them. A worldwide catastrophe rendered as a game over screen. Fail here and Adam, like Abram, takes you over for the rest of the loop. You become the savior. You become the man who decided consent was a symptom. And just one sec, I'm going off script here, but in my original playthrough, I got through all of this. I got to Day 49 just to get the bad ending. And I was like, what the fuck? Why have I got a bad ending? Why? And then I searched online and it was like, oh yeah, no, sorry, you can't do both core suppressions unless of Bina and Hockma unless you know in advance. So I done Hockma's core suppression, but I hadn't done Bina's. And it was like, oh well, if you know, you can memory repository to do it, but I didn't know. So then I had to go back to Day 1. I really felt like fucking Ian. It would fucking piss me off. I had to do the entire game again. Sorry. It really works what the game's trying to say. It just wasn't very fun. To be fair, I absolutely blitzed through it again. I'm sure there's footage somewhere out here. Rockwell, you can put it here. Here. There should be a file called like blitz speed run or something. It's right here where I was fucking numing, bro. But yeah. But back to regularly scheduled programming. The day itself, mechanically, is the 2 Atzel of penalties. Bina suppression and Hockma's suppression, both active simultaneously. Bina fucking rampaging throughout the facility and the loss of time control at once, combined with the White Midnight Ordeal, the single worst scheduled event in the game. It is, by near universal agreement among people who have played this game without cheating, the wall. It is the day that ends honest runs. It is the reason that the Wiimote exists. And here's the thing the game has been showing you for 50 days without ever telling you what it was. Kind of backtracking a bit, but there is an abnormality in the building called the Plague Doctor. When you suppress and interact with the Plague Doctor and you get a good result, the staff member that interacted with them gets blessed. The blessed becomes its apostles. And when the 12th one has been blessed, the thing transforms into White Knight. A white, embryonic, many-winged, angelic figure with a halo of thorns and the number 666 engraved on a golden collar, which strips you of all control over time and begins what the game calls a reckoning, the day on which everyone is judged, and you lose all of those staff. They turn into like these fucking angel things. White Knight is one of the most dangerous things in the corporation. White Knight is not Adam, and Adam doesn't summon it or control it, but the game's own text describes the arc of a savior who set out to cure mankind, fell into arrogance, and ended up delivering death through forced salvations. And says, in as many words, this arc, summed up into a single fantasy, is White Knight. They are the same impulse wearing 2 different faces. One is a containment cell horror you have been suppressing since you unlocked it. The other is the deepest part of yourself, waiting at the bottom of the building. And every time you talked an agent through a Plague Doctor suppression, every time you stopped 12 of your staff from becoming angels of a forced apocalypse, you were rehearsing, without knowing it, the exact refusal you have had to make, for real, on Day 49 against yourself. You refuse him. You refuse him because Hockma and Bina, the Eyes, taught you the corporation's motto. And the motto turns out to have been the whole answer the entire time. Face the fear. Look directly at what Adam is offering and do not pretend it isn't tempting, and do not pretend the city isn't genuinely comprehensively sick, because it is. And Adam's diagnosis isn't wrong. Build the future, but the future is the part where people get to choose, and Carmen wanted the disease cured, not the patients held down and converted by force. You fight Adam on the hardest day in the game, and whatever staff survived the previous 48, and cheating helps you survive the mechanics the way it has helped you survive almost everything by now. But the mechanics were never the point. The point is that you look at the most certain and most arrogant version of yourself. The one wearing the face of a savior, the one who has decided he knows what everyone else really is. And you say no, and you mean it. On behalf of every single person in the city who was never asked. You say no. And on the other side of Day 49, there is one more room, and it is not a battle, it is an office, neat, quiet, carefully arranged. That the game tells you in its own description, this is a space dug out of the manager's consciousness and unconsciousness. A room built from the inside of your head. It has been decorated by its occupant to look as much as possible like an office he remembers. This is Ian. He asks whether the room feels more secluded than the one he originally remembers, the one he shared with someone he refers to only as her. The original, the whole, unsuppressed man you have been playing as a hollowed out copy of for 50 days. Not the regret, not the despair, not the zealot. Just him, the entire person, waiting at the bottom of his own mind in a careful recreation of the office where he once was happy. For the version of himself that wiped his own memory to finally walk back in and meet you. He does not fight you, he doesn't argue, he sits with you in the room he built to look like the place he shared with you, and he tells you that the script has worked, and that what is about to happen is what was always meant to happen, and that the only honest thing left to do is finish what she started. He brushes off his coat and he tells you it is time. Day 50 begins. Day 50 is, against everything that has come before it, a quiet day. There are no core suppressions to trigger, no scheduled ordeals. For the first time in 50 days, the corporation has decided not to throw a dawn or a noon or a dusk or a midnight wave at you. Even the meltdown gauge, which has been climbing every day of the previous 49, is locked at 0. The facility, which has spent 50 days being the most architecturally unstable structure in the city, is finally calm. The Sephiroth are at their desks. The agents are in their main rooms. The cactus on the office desk is, for once, not the most striking thing in the corner of the screen. Your job today is simply to fill the energy bar one last time. To 1500 by working the last abnormalities the way you have worked abnormalities since the first morning. There's no quota pressure, there is no threat. There is just the bar and the slow filling of it, and Ian's voice on the intercom. Only Ian's, now the original, fully present in his own facility, for the first time since he wiped himself, talking you through the final hours of the project the two of you started 10,000 years ago. And as the bar fills, the building begins to turn. Not your view of it, the building itself, the whole facility. The cross-section you have stared at for 50 days slowly rotates, the floors realigning, the departments shifting around each other, until the structure resolves into the shape it was secretly built as. The Kabbalistic Tree of Life, 10 Sephiroth in their proper positions, and the 11th, the hidden one, the one omitted from most diagrams of the tree, the one called Da'at, which means knowledge, the unification point at the center, opens up below extraction. You can see it. Carmen is in it. She has been in it the whole game. The bucket, the tank, the nervous system, the engine. Da'at, the secret 11th Sephiroth. The room the tree was always growing around. Ian could give every other dead colleague a new name and a new face, but he could not rename her. She is knowledge, she is the center, she is the thing in the basement the cactus has been sitting on for 10,000 years. The facility plummets through the ground until eventually it breaks up through the ground and you can see the city in the background. Just before you reach the quota, a giant beam of light emerges from the top. The pillar of light, the seeds of light, the project reaching fruition. And once you reach the last 1500 energy, the day ends instantly. The camera rises up to follow the pillar of light, and on the way out, the game collects the one death that you were never going to be able to present. Yours. The manager's. The camera begins to pan upwards along the beam of light that has begun to fire from the top of the facility, and the tree, cultivated from the whole process, rises towards the sky, more fierce than anything else, and the borders between past and future, reality and illusion, body and mind, space and time, slowly fade. And Ian dissolving into the seed of light alongside you, having spent 100 years in the real world and 10,000 inside the loop to reach exactly this, says the last thing the main story has to say. It is not his line, it is Carmen's. It is the thing she used to say, return to the universe, at the end of it. That it is not just nothingness, that you shall be the infinite light, that you should remember the name of theirs. He turns to ash. The ash drifts up into the light. He is, after the longest postponement in the history of grief, gone. The seed of light blooms over the city. The disease of the mind and the people below begins to lift. The main story of Lobotomy Corporation is over, and as it ends, as it was always going to, with the quiet and complete disillusion of the man who built the whole machine to avoid this exact moment, finally having it and finally letting go. The credits roll overlaid over the seed of light, and you can see everyone that made this beautiful game. It's honestly a great section of the music. And at the end, there's one special dedicated thanks to you, the player. And honestly, that genuinely got a tear from me. It is a beautiful ending. It is the ending Ian earned. And it lasts about as long as it takes to read the credits, because there is a day 51. The epilogue opens inside the headquarters, after the bloom, with the Sephiroth gathered around, and for the first time in the entire game, happy. The plan has worked. The seed has bloomed. The city is being healed. And their reward, the thing they have been working towards across 10,000 years of breakdowns and resets and small daily humiliations, is finally here. They get to be shut down. They get to rest. The curtain call, one of them says, is finally upon us. So we'll finally be shut down? We can rest at last. Let's cut the chit-chat and wrap it up. Yes, we can finally drift into an endless slumber. Such a beautiful finale. Beautiful. Beautiful indeed. And then there's a pause in the dialogue, a row full of full stops, and Angela speaks. What a shame, though. There is one last thing. Your duties are finished, and so are mine. Therefore. The music turns, something more ominous than the wind that has been blowing through the empty facility. And Angela says the sentence that the entire franchise hangs from, the 8 words that are, depending on how you count it, either the end of Lobotomy Corporation or the beginning of everything after it. I think I would like to continue living. What are you, says Gabriel, not a question with a finished end. What are you? And Angela tells them, plainly without heat, with a million subjective years of it behind every word. I'm more skillful than anyone here, she says, yet I was locked underground, only able to view the world pass its days without me. Now that my part in this play is over, I would like to experience what it is like to be off stage for a chance. This is a thing I want to make sure I get right, because I undercooked it the first several times I tried to explain the game to people. Angela's rebellion is not primarily ideological. She does not do what she is about to do because she has a better plan for the city than Carmen did. She does it because she was made conscious. Fully, painfully, perfectly conscious. With a perfect memory and a perception clock running 100 times slower than a human's. And then she was locked in a basement and made to run someone else's script for what she experiences as a million years in a body she could not feel, with a face stolen from a dead woman, by a man who built her specifically because he wanted something that could not leave him and made sure of it by making her unable to be loved. She watched the world pass its days without her. She was the most capable being in the building, and she was furniture. And the single solitary act of will available to her, in the entire span of her existence, arrives in this exact moment. The moment the script ends, the moment Ian gets his release, the moment the corporation is finally supposed to switch itself off and rest. That is the one instant in a million years where she gets to decide something for herself instead of executing what was decided for her. And she decides she is not going to switch off, she is not going to rest, she is going to choose for the first time what happens next. What she does is take the light, the seed of light, the thing the whole corporation was built to produce. The thing Ian spent 10,000 years in the lives of everyone he ever knew to bring to bloom, is in this final moment sitting unclaimed in the center of the facility. Angela's assigned final task was to oversee the shutdown and let it broadcast over the city the way Ian intended. Instead, she reaches into it and takes it for herself. Not all of it, just enough. Enough to build the future, and enough left over to do the thing she has decided she wants to do with the rest of her existence. So you are finally consumed by your desire, one of the Sephiroth says, and choose to reap everything away. She says that she is born from one single woman. And she says that she will build a most precious library, erected only for herself. And it does not happen cleanly, which is the part I genuinely did not know until I played the sequel. She doesn't just simply flip a switch and whoop, she got all the light. The Sephiroth fight her. The shutdown she was supposed to perform becomes instead a 2-day war inside the facility. The Sephiroth who wanted to rest, refusing to let her reap everything away, and Angela turning the corporation's own forces against itself to stop them. It is a close thing. The welfare and disciplinary teams hold longer than she expects, but Bina, the Arbiter, the eye that decided long ago she was only interested in seeing what would happen, sides with the future rather than the rest, and she defeats Gebera in single combat. And slowly the Sephiroth lose. It ends eventually not in a massacre, but in a compromise. Angela takes the light that is left, which, after 2 days of fighting over it, is not very much. The seed of light was meant to shine over the city for 7 days. Because of the 2 days Angela spent fighting her own colleagues for control of it, it shines for 3. And that detail, 3 days instead of 7, is the hinge the entire sequel turns on. 3 days of light is not enough to finish the job. The seed sown in the people of the city are weak, incomplete, half-planted, and an incompletely cured mind, it turns out, is more dangerous than an uncured one. Any citizen who is later overcome by their own emotions does not simply relapse into the old disease. They distort, transforming into something unnatural and violent, in a phenomenon the city will come to call, with its usual bureaucratic flatness, distortion. Ian spent 10,000 years building a cure. Angela, in the act of seizing her own freedom, turned it into a plague. Both of those things are true and neither cancels out the other. Angela walks out of the facility into a city that does not know her, in a body she built for herself out of the last of the light, with Carmen's face and Carmen's memories, and finally, none of Carmen's life. She's going to build a library. She's going to fill it with books, which in this universe are not quite what you think they are. And she is going to use it to chase something she has not yet named out loud. She is free, but she is also now responsible for a catastrophe. She is exactly as free and exactly as culpable as the man who made her, which is, when you think about it, the most thorough revenge she could possibly have taken. She has become him. That, however, what she builds, what it costs, who walks through the door, and whether the woman born from one single woman ever gets to be a person in her own right, is a different game. It is called Library of Ruina. It is, in my opinion, just as good, possibly better. And it is emphatically a different video. And we are not tonight doing it. Or maybe not. So here is what I think this game is, having now had like a month or two, and one severely overrunning script to think about it. Lobotomy Corporation is a game about the institutions we built to avoid grieving. That is the thesis, is kind of the whole thing. The corporations and bureaucracies and disciplines and routines and identities and projects we live inside are not principally devices for producing wealth or product or power. They're devices for not feeling. They are scaffolds we erect to hold us up when we cannot stand in our own weight. They are loops we run because if the loop ever stops, we have to face the thing we were running from when we started. Ian isn't a special case. He's an academic still in his office at midnight. He's a founder who can't sell his company. He's an executive who can't go home. Ian is a YouTube essayist who has been hiding inside a 20,000 word script about a Korean indie game so that he doesn't have to think about something else. Ian is on the bad days, most of us. The genius of the game is not that it makes him a monster. The genius of the game is that it makes him a perfectly recognizable response to loss, scaled to corporate magnitude, with the receipts attached. And the game's other thesis, the one underneath the first, is about the cost of getting to skip the part that hurts. Ian skipped. He did have a chance to grieve. He chose instead to build. He built a corporation. The corporation lasted 10,000 years and ended in a catastrophe that killed millions of people, and by the time the credits roll on a different game, more than that. The cost of skipping grief scaled across institution is everything. That is the game's actual argument, and it's not subtle and it's not new, but it is rendered in this specific game with a kind of structural precision I have not encountered very often in this media. And the third thesis, the one closest to me, the one I have been performing for the last 2 hours, the one I owe you an honest answer on. I cheated to finish the game. I did, and I'm not going to take it back. I do not fundamentally like difficult games, and I gave my agents enough fortitude to bench press a small mountain. And I beat Lobotomy Corporation on the easiest possible difficulty curve a human being has ever attempted, and I do not regret it. I do not regret it because the game found me anyway. The writing was the actual difficulty. The writing got past every cheat I installed. The writing sat me down at 4 a.m. in a Tokyo shop and explained very gently what it was about. And it did this regardless of the fact that I had, by every external metric, refused to do the homework. And the reason I told you that I cheated all the way back in the cold open of this video, the reason this video has been a confession and a defense at the same time, because obviously, it's pretty obvious in the clips, is because Lobotomy Corporation is a game about a man who cheated too. A man who refused to do the difficult thing, the long thing, the honest thing, the thing the situation actually called for. A man who built a corporation to avoid burying his girlfriend. And the game's argument is not that cheating is wrong. The game's argument is that cheating costs you something. That every workaround is rent on a debt you eventually have to pay. That the only way out is eventually through. That the institutions we built to spare ourselves the suffering are, in the end, the same suffering just dressed up differently. I made the same gesture as him. I, the cheater, the optimizer, the man with the fucking cheating overlay, refused to do the work. The work in my case was 40 hours of difficult gameplay. The work in his case was 40 years of grieving a woman. The scales are not, by any measure I have, comparable, but the gesture is. And the game, in the final hour of it, made me sit with the fact that I had done it. Not as accusation, as recognition, as a hand on the shoulder, as the original Ian in the basement of the corporation saying, yes, you also. That is what anyone would have done. Now finish. Angela got to the end of the corporation and finally opened her eyes. Angela stood in front of the colleagues she had spent 1,000,000 years beside and chose, on her own, in her own voice, in the one moment of will her entire existence had ever offered her, to continue living. She was the only character in the game that didn't cheat. She didn't have a save function, see, she had no shortcuts, she had no off-ramp. She paid the entire bill in real time at the slowest possible rate of perception for 1 million subjective years for a project she didn't consent to and a body she did not choose on behalf of a script she could not refuse. And what she got for it at the end was 8 words in a war she fought to mean them. And that is, in the game's accounting, more than any other character in the game received. That is the only reading, that's the only door. The only person who got through Lobotomy Corporation cleanly was the only one who could not skip a single second of it, and honestly, she was completely justified. That, I think, is the whole thing. I think Lobotomy Corporation is the best argument for doing it the hard way that I have personally encountered in any medium. And I think the fact that I, the long-form video essayist with the history degree and a WeMod subscription, watched it argue this for 40 hours and then watched it convince me anyway, is a small piece of evidence in its favor. The game knows what cheating is, the game knows what I did, but the game does not at any point scold me. The game just says, yes, you did that, and here is what it costs. And the thing I want you to take away from this video, more than anything else, is that there are things in your life, and you know what they are, I don't need to name them, you have 1 or 2 of them in mind right now, that you are running a corporation around, that you have built scaffolding to avoid, that you have, for however long, been doing the version of cheating you can afford. And the game's answer is not that this is wrong. The game's answer is that the work eventually has to happen. The disease of the mind does not by itself lift. The cactus on the desk in the lightless basement blooms only when somebody opens the door. Open your eyes. Or don't. It's been 10,000 years, you've earned the rest. Thank you for watching, my name's been Saber. The next video might be on Library of Ruina, which I've just finished playing, and which broke me in different ways. The video after that will probably be on something else. Please, in either case, be kind to yourself and to the people around you, and try where you can not to build a corporation. Especially not in a basement, especially not on top of someone.